I'm often asked, how do you improve at Yu-Gi-Oh? How do you get better to the point where you're a top performing player, constantly doing well, and can win in spots where you're behind and otherwise shouldn't be able to win? Now, there's no one element that'll get you to that point, but one that I feel like is often overlooked is the art of bluffing, especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, specifically, I'm talking about something that I've dubbed Schrödinger's trap. Now, if you aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, I have made a video on the concept, so go check that out first so you get an understanding of what I'm saying. But why does this matter? Well, YCS Raleigh took place last weekend, and in the finals, I think the Labyrinth player, Jack Zed, had a ginormous opportunity that he missed because he didn't really incorporate this principle into his gameplay. So before we continue on to the actual match, let's get a quick rundown on what Schrödinger's trap is. Okay, so it's a play on the Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger's physics thought experiment, Schrödinger's cat, in which we'd have a cat inside of a box with a poison or with a bomb with 50% chance to kill the cat over the course of the next hour. After the hour is up, before we open the box, is the cat alive or dead? Well, without observing it, we don't know. It's both alive and dead at the same time. And that's the principle I use with traps. Until we can observe a trap card, the set card in the opponent's field, it could act as multiple things at the same time. And as someone who's playing against a bunch of trap cards, we must play around each of them. Now, where this can matter is, as the player who controls the trap card, know the power of that set variable is almost more important sometimes than the trap itself, and by shotgunning your cards too early, you give up that leverage. But it comes up in a different way here in the YCS Final, so let's take a look. The YCS Final starts with Jack Z taking the die roll win. He leads off with an Ariana here to add a Chandelier from deck to hand. He discards it, and a Backjack, pretty good start setting a big welcome Labyrinth, pretty standard setup, and the Backjack here reveals 3 cards. Now we get spoiled. As someone who's watching, we can see with Jack that there's not really a good option here on the top of his deck. The only trap card there is another big welcome Labyrinth, which effectively doesn't do anything. So this Backjack will have to be used later or blindly when he uses big welcome to shuffle his deck, but until then, it's not going to serve too much of a purpose. He follows up the turn with a simple set card, and he passes. Nothing fantastic, but that's what Labyrinth does. So now it's Cameron's turn up with Snake Eye. He leads with Bonfire for Snake Eye Ash. Snake Eye Ash is summoned and met with infinite permanence. Now that's a big help to Cameron because that's immediately one variable out of the way. Now it's important to note that set cards aren't the only variables anymore. In Yu-Gi-Oh, because of hand traps and other cards, anything that has a variable disruption that can turn into multiple different things presents the threat of multiple different negates or interrupts or disruptions. This Backjack also counts as one. So as Cameron is playing his turn, he doesn't know this Backjack is a whiff. He has to play around pretty much any trap card in the game still, as if there's another set card thanks to the Backjack, until he has a way to either force it out or negate it. But next up here, he's going to press forward. We see a 1-2 come down, and we get the Die Belster, the Black Witch, which is used sending a Poplar, which will give him the send ability for Ash or original Simple Spoil later, but also will grab the Simple Spoil with Black Witch. At this point, it's a pretty clear play for Cameron. If he can get to Dark Charmer and then revive his opponent's Chandelier and then make Celine, he'll have 3 spells, be able to revive Black Witch, make Appaloosa. He'll turn off any of the monster effects disruptions that Jack has. Only really big welcome would be left, and we find out later that Cameron has that covered. So he goes for the Dark Charmer play, and Jack responds with this big welcome Labyrinth, fully aware of what Cameron is trying to set up. But, as I said, this big welcome is met with Ash Blossom. So this means that the Dark will connect, but also this Backjack will only get dead cards now. But again, it's important to remember, Cameron doesn't know that. He technically still will be playing around this card for the rest of this duel. But from Cameron's perspective, there are no back row left. The only disruptions until his Backjack is used are via monster form. So if he can get to this Appaloosa, he is in a pretty good shape. He presses forward, makes the Celine, and there, Jack meets him with Nibiru. Cameron still has a Sinful Spoil. He has a Poplar still up, and with that gone, Cameron has no problem pressing forward. He gets the Oak out, gets the Trigger Poplar, and from there, the very cookie cutter Snake Eye OTK proceeds to play out. Jack has no answers, and he loses. But what if Jack doesn't use Nibiru there? The Appaloosa comes down, and from there, the next piece of play is obviously the Sinful Spoils. It's going to send Poplar, which will get you into the same line of combo that you would have done in the original line, and then you get to the kill point super easily. But say we get to the Okon field, and at this point, Diabellstar's normal summon is used, and original Sinful is used. There's not really many extensions left in Cameron's deck. There's potential 1-for-1. So if you're in this position, this is the place you want to stop Cameron. So here, you could activate Backjack. Now, why would you do this? From Cameron's perspective, this could still be a very meaningful trap. What does it threaten? It could threaten a Welcome Labyrinth, which wouldn't matter too much. Big Welcome Labyrinth is unusable. It could threaten Impermanence, which probably would have been used earlier, so it's unlikely to be this. Dogmatic Punishment, which could prove to be pretty impactful if hitting the Appaloosa plus a Snake Eye Oak, or Destructive Daruma Cannon, which would clear the entire field. Now, Cameron has to wonder for a second, would he have ever held any of these cards rather than using the Backjack early before the Appaloosa? And there is some merit to it, because if he had gone for Daruma Cannon or Punishment earlier, he could have been Nightmare Phoenix at that point and then Sinful Spoil afterwards, and we would have been in a pretty similar scenario to the Nibiru coming down. So if you're in Cameron's position here, you have to wonder, okay, this Backjack is either a bluff to force something out, or it's a Daruma Cannon. Now, he does have to take a gamble here, right? Because if he thinks that it's a bluff, the game plays out the same way as it would have normally. But if he says, okay, maybe he was trying to protect this from a Nightmare Phoenix, but then let's say that Cameron is actually scared of the Daruma Cannon, and he recognized that maybe Jack had to get greedy and hope that Cameron would let the Backjack go through in fear of a Nibiru to force Daruma through, which in itself is a reverse type of play, playing on that variable where that card in hand could be a Nibiru. So Cameron is at a bit of an impasse here. He has to choose to play around Nibiru or Daruma Cannon. Off pure odds alone, you'd reckon that playing around the Nibiru in hand is more statistically likely. But you also have to consider your opponent, how they've played, and all these things. Now, Cameron very easily could have just said, okay, this is nothing, let it go through, and they killed him anyways. But there's a chance that in fear of getting outplayed or of something crazy happening, he uses the Appaloosa on the Backjack, at which point Nibiru is chained, and the game takes a drastic turn. Not only does this Backjack now resolve and set the big welcome, it clears the field, shuts off all of Cameron's plays, and sets up Jack perfectly the next turn to steal back victory. And in the case that that happens, that game 2 where Jack had this crazy string of events to claim victory could have been the game 3 of the match, and Jack Z becomes the YCS Raleigh champion instead of Cameron. Or maybe Cameron is so shook from game 1 that in game 2 it goes slightly different, because that was also an incredibly close game with things potentially going either way depending on how it's played out. So it goes to show that there was potential here for Jack, and it would have required him to make a very bold gambit, but when you think about it, it's not really bold. Now, there are some cases where you can be greedier and make this type of play based around bluffs and variables to get extra value. However, in this specific case, there was no downside for Jack. The writing was on the wall. He knew original Sinful Spoil was there, and by Nibiruing on the Selene, he's telling Cameron, okay, I have no more Nibiru, and Cameron has no ability to play through any other disruption. If he passes, he's going to lose. So what else is he to do besides try and kill? If the Backjack or last card in hand prove to be some sort of disruption, then he's going to be in a bad spot either way. So Cameron's going to go for game, and he's going to find out it works out, like he actually did in real life. And the downside to the gambit is fairly minimal besides telling your opponent you're open to this type of play, which honestly isn't much of a downside, because telling your opponent that you're able to bluff and all that such will get them double thinking and gives you even more opportunity to try and get them in the future. It's plays like these that are going to get you back from games that are otherwise unwinnable, because if Jack Z just plays his cards for maximum value at the spot where they'd otherwise be most correct, he loses the game every single time. And it's these gambles or bold moves that are going to give you the ability to win games that you otherwise had no chance of winning. And whenever I'm able to pull off something in this type of fashion, it's when I feel the best about my gameplay. It makes me feel like, damn, I earned this, because there are games which you probably just outplayed your opponent. I'm also curious to hear what you guys think. What outplays via bluffs or the Schrödinger's trap theory have you guys utilized best? Any specific plays, duels that stick out as where you're really proud of yourself, or of your opponent where you got straight up bamboozled? I'm curious to see if you guys have any cool stories of your own. Anyways, if you're interested in continuing to elevate your game to the next level, let me know down below as well, so I can continue making videos about the more advanced mechanics in Yu-Gi-Oh! the statistics, outplays, the mind games. Those type of things are incredibly interesting. And that's what's required to really get to the top level in Yu-Gi-Oh! So I would be thrilled to make more videos on this type of topics. Let me know down below, and I'll get them out to you. See you guys all next time. Peace.